Hello, my comrades. In this video, I decided to take on the challenge of going to Moho using only solid rocket boosters. Now, this hasn't actually been done by anyone, I don't think. Matt Lown and Stratton Litz and Scott Manley, probably, the big YouTubers. A lot of people have done missions like this, similar ones to other places, like even like Tylo, that's one of the less popular ones, but like Elu, Tylo, Eve, a lot of those have already been done, but I noticed no one did one for Moho, so I decided to do one. And also, it's kind of like a 100 sub special, so just in case you're wondering for some reason, I don't know why you would be. But anyway, enough about that. More about the actual mission itself. So going to Moho, even with liquid fuel, is quite the challenge. I'd say it's the second hardest destination in the game, Eve being the first. Just the ascent stage that you have to have for Eve is so tedious and crushing because of the atmosphere. The crushing atmosphere, it is just a horrific experience. So, yeah, not going to do an Eve mission like that probably for a while. Also, a lot of that ground's already been covered. But, yeah. So, the reason why it's so difficult is because of its proximity to the sun. In essence, Moho's orbit has a big difference in energy from Kerbin's orbit, so that naturally translates to a big cost of energy to go from Kerbin to Moho. In fact, just to give an example, the capture burn costs about 4,500 delta V. So that's why it is such a big rocket, really, just because of things like that. It's roughly 2,200 to get there in the first place, and then it's 4,500 to actually get captured. Landing and ascent itself is pretty easy, but then it's like another 2,500 delta V to get back to Kerbin. So it's a very costly mission. I think I probably had something like 14,000 delta V in this thing total. I don't know. It's at 11,000 now, just to give a little bit of a perspective there. I guess the ascent itself here was actually pretty nominal. I will say though, with the first stage, it was a huge pain because the Kraken the Kraken likes it when you have a bunch of parts, a bunch of boosters strapped together in close proximity, because sometimes the joints will literally just magically break and you will just see a booster or two fly off for no reason at all. There will just be a short lag spike and then you'll just see a booster fly off. Very aggravating. That's why I had so many struts. But the real challenge with this video was honestly the precision that it takes to do this kind of mission. It's like this. You have to have roughly a certain amount of delta V in big fuel tanks, essentially, but then you also need to give yourself some delta V in some smaller boosters to allow yourself to do fine adjustments to things like your orbit. Like here, to give an example, I had too much delta V actually in those bigger fuel tanks there, or I shouldn't say fuel tanks, in those bigger boosters there. And so what I actually had to do was to miss Moho on purpose with the initial transfer burn, and then do another maneuver node that had perfectly 183 delta V in it, because that is how much delta V was between those two SRBs there that kind of like make the stick coming out. Looks weird. I had to actually change the staging around a bit to accommodate for this special situation. So yeah, only doing that kind of maneuver could I actually get the level of precision. And here, even doing this one, I didn't get the level of precision that I needed. I came up like on the northern side, which isn't ideal. It's like if things don't go to plan, you're screwed. You're gonna have to redo something. You can give yourself some delta V to allow for the margin of error that does exist. It's not like you have to do everything perfectly, but it has to be pretty perfect. Like there, actually here, just getting into this trajectory that I got, I had to use some might engines, yeah, that's what they're called, to adjust my orbit again a bit. So it was actually kind of sketchy But yeah, actually getting into my parking orbit around Moho was pretty successful. The only thing was, like I said, you have to be pretty spot on with everything, and as you can see here, I was not quite spot on. I wasn't able to get into the parking orbit that I required, which was actually around 30 kilometers. So without this hammer booster here, I actually would not have had the energy to land. Even if you think, well, maybe, okay, it's a height problem, so why not just land on the dark side where you're lower? Even though you're lower, you would be going faster with this orbit that I had, with this higher energy orbit, than you would be with the correct orbit that this lander was designed for. The lander itself, I thought it was kind of interesting. I knew that it would be tall, so instead of going with the standard method where you kind of have the boosters run out of fuel going from outside to the inside, instead of doing that and having them pop off as they go, I decided to go with a little bit less efficiency and just leave them there so that I could have the lander legs further out. And even with them this far out, this thing was a huge pain to land. I had to basically find a flat enough surface like this plateau here, and then just do it over and over and over again until I got just right. Here, actually, you can see I literally touched down, started to go back up again, and then came back down. And actually almost fell over again there, just barely making it over, because I did include 7 inline mini reaction wheels. I don't remember what they're called. I know they're reaction wheels, but I don't remember what kind specifically they're called, but it doesn't matter. So yeah, I was able to successfully land it after enough attempts. The landing was actually one of the trickiest things to get down. It's kind of like, if you're ever going to do a mission like this where you have SRBs only, what you really have to do is to work backwards, starting out from designing the upper stage and thinking, okay, what am I going to need to do to be able to get this thing back to Kerbin? And then you got to think, alright, what am I going to need to get this thing into orbit around the thing that I am coming back to Kerbin from? And you just work backwards from there. And in doing so, I decided to make the upper stage actually as light as possible. You can see it is literally just Jeb in a chair. So, yeah, in a heat shield. So that was kind of funny. I actually ended up doing this after doing an entire mission, essentially. I got to Moho, I got my trajectory set and everything, and then I realized it's a 4,500 Delta V cost, not a 2,200 Delta V cost, which I thought it was. So then I had to redesign the entire rocket, which kind of was awful. But that's how I got this kind of nice design. The ascent stage is fairly, I guess, like what you would expect. It was just able to get into like a low orbit of 20k above the surface. Not really that much energy. You know, it's really just there to get it into the precise orbit it needed. And something I didn't talk about, there's even like more precision in this mission than I actually have talked about, really. I actually had to wait for Kerbin to be, or I guess for the KSC to be at the right time of day, to be able to get the right inclination, to be able to get the right transfer, or I guess the best transfer over to Moho. And that's why I was time warping at the beginning. I kind of forgot to explain that earlier, but that's why, if you were wondering. And then here also I had to get into a orbit of roughly 0 inclination. I got really accurate. I was like 1.6 degrees, I think. So that was actually quite surprising. I was I guess proud of myself, to toot my own horn a little bit, but yeah, in the end it worked out. I had a little bit of trouble getting the transfer to work because the first time I tried it, Moho was actually closer to its apoapsis, which made a big enough difference for the return stage to not have enough Delta V. It made like a few hundred Delta V difference, and it did not have enough to make it back. So I had to wait for it to be closer for its periapsis, and I also had to wait for Moho to be roughly level, I guess, in its orbit with Kerbin, because otherwise the burn to change the inclination of the orbit would have added a lot of delta V and mass, and that would have been a huge pain. So I just waited for the alignment to be right, and I was able to eventually get it, which was satisfying. I honestly did not think this video would take such a short amount of time to make. It was only like a 5-day, I guess, period between this video and the last one that I posted. I kind of get right on these things, but especially in quarantine, there's really not that much to do. Enough about that, though. You might have noticed I stuffed some SRBs, or not, I keep saying SRBs, separatrons, in the upper stage, just to give myself some fine maneuvering. Like I did here, I had to get it in a fairly narrow margin in terms of the return altitude, no, periapsis, I guess, which was roughly 40k. I probably could have done 30 or like 35 and not had the thing melt, but you know, it's like if you go too high, then you won't kill off enough delta V, or not delta V, but you won't kill off enough velocity. And here, I actually was quite surprised, because this thing, after spending 3 years flying around the sun, came back to the KSC by pure chance. That's really not something you can plan with this kind of mission, or at least it's very difficult, and I honestly don't know how you would plan this. But it literally happened by complete accident. I landed close enough to the KSC to be able to return, literally not to the entire KSC, just to the launch pad. Literally just to the launch pad. I wouldn't have been able to make it back to the rest of it. I would have had to walk a little bit. But I was literally able to go back to the launch pad only. You know, and that's something that I really love about doing these sort of external seat missions, that you can fly around with the parachute a little bit, which makes the return a bit easier. But this was literally by accident. This was complete luck. Jeb, this is his like Odyssey story or something. You know, he came right back to where it all began so many years ago. You know, I really like how nimble the Kerbals are in their EVA suit, or yeah, I guess EVA suit, with the parachute. It's very nice. So yeah, Jebediah, quite poetically, returning to the place where this all began. That's wrapping it up for this video. So if you liked it, please subscribe to my channel and also like the video. That'll help it out, get more views. On the right will be the subscription button. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.